Good afternoon and welcome to the Virtually Speaking podcast. My name is Pete Fletcher, and joining me as usual is my good friend, Mr. John Nicholson. John, happy Friday, buddy.
It is a good to be Friday. I'm currently trying to stare at some metrics on some disk performance and trying to make sense of this.
Yeah.
I'm just getting a little overwhelmed. I've got all of this monitoring systems and all this data, and it's just kind of hard to sort through.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I've been tweeting
over there.
Well, I'm trying to help someone do some sizing, and if you look at the tweet storm I did yesterday, I'm playing guess what that application is from staring at the raw performance outputs. And some other people have joined me on Twitter. So if you're listening to this, go look on Twitter. I'm going to start trying to do this thing on like once a week where I post like a random performance graph, and we all try to guess what the hell's going on.
I like it. Well, John, there'll be no guessing today because we've got one of the experts on, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things. Certainly, VMware's some of VMware's announcements at VMware Explorer that he had a lot to do with. So I will bring him on now. Jad El-Zein, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. Happy to be here, as always.
Haven't seen you in a while. I did see you at VMware Explorer. We were chatting not only about the announcements, but we were also talking about something that you do on the side, which is like a personal hobby of yours. That like you do like woodworking.
I do. This is my COVID hobby du jour or de year. I don't know.
De año.
And
John, this guy, I'm not kidding. Like when we say like hobby, this is next level hobby. I need to put some pictures on the podcast just to show you some of the stuff he's been doing, but tell us how you got started with this.
So let's see. We found out that the kids are going to be doing school from home. So as many parents did, they went online to see if they can buy a desk. And the soonest we can get a desk was 4 months. And it was absurd. So I built one. I was like, hey, I've got a miter saw. That's all I had. I'm pretty sure I could build something, right? So hit the YouTubes, of course. And I was like, I could do that, but I will make these changes. So my daughter and I got on a notepad, and she had an idea. She was 7 at the time. She had an idea of what she wanted, and we built exactly that. And then, of course, when all you have is a miter saw and you want it to be perfect, that desk ended up costing several $1,000s because I definitely went and bought a lot of tools that were missing. And then, that led to, hey, I'm going to build my son a desk, and I'm going to, all of our Christmas gifts are going to be things that I build. So it was one thing that led to another. I also built this.
Oh my goodness.
As part of my COVID hobby is I revamped the whole entertainment room in our house and all the built-ins for the cinema. And so, lots of tool investment, and it's become something that I absolutely love to do. Here we are.
Yeah, well, for the folks that are on audio only, you should probably check out the YouTube version of this because his house is looking insane. You took on quite the hobby there, and when you told me about that and you showed me the pictures, and then we started talking about Aria, I was like, oh, what would be the parallel here? Because certainly, I don't know if Aria is the kind of thing where you would spend a whole bunch of money and create this custom thing that you could have done cheaper. But I thought, man, there's a much better analogy here.
Yeah, there is actually. It's actually funny. So one of the things that I've learned in woodworking, and several mistakes, and not just mistakes, but also, at this point, 2 years later, I plan everything out. I CAD it all out, and everything between how the parts fit together, but also in the order in which you put those parts together is a big part of the success and longevity of that product. And so I use that tilt to talk about the analogy here, because what we built in Aria, and I'm sure we're going to get very much into that.
Oh yeah,
is almost the opposite of what we've done in the past, right? We have a lot of in the cloud management BU, we have a lot of disparate tools that do a lot of things in their domain really, really well, and our approach to bringing them together has largely been like, hey, just let this guy talk to this guy, and they'll communicate, and we'll build some logic in there, and it seemed force fit. It didn't build a longevity of the solution, and so it was a little bit of a stretch, but that's the analogy I came up with, right? So the approach we're taking now, we'll get deeper into it, is plan everything up front, build the foundation, think about how everything's going to fit in together, and don't force it in.
Yeah.
Build the platform so that these specific solutions and the needs of the customers are fit in perfectly, right? We want a custom fit for all the technologies, and that, I thought, was a pretty decent analogy.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So let's, we've been bearing the lead here for a little while. Tell us a little bit about some of the announcements that you had your hand in for VMware Explorer.
Yeah, so we announced the public name of Project Ensemble, which I've spoken about in the past, and that is VMware Aria, specifically Aria Graph and Aria Hub. Now, the broader announcement at Explorer was about was VMware Aria, right? And VMware Aria is the full umbrella in which the entire cloud management stack is plugging into. And in that stack, we have vRealize automation, now Aria automation. But it's not just VRA being rebranded or renamed to Aria automation. Aria automation is actually a segment in this new capability. Operations, now Aria operations, which includes operations for networks and operations for apps. Again, it's about bringing these domain-specific parts and bringing them under Aria. And when the word Aria lives in front of the application, that means it's actually plugging into the platform. And the platform is the new thing. It's Aria Graph and Aria Hub. Aria Graph is a ground-up rebuild. It's what our team's been building for two years now, executing on it for about 2 years, but a large chunk of engineering focused on it for the majority of this year, and so that was really how the Aria Graph, the underlying technologies, is really what makes all of this possible, and why you're seeing Aria come to market. Actually, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you know why Aria? Can you take a guess?
Well, I had
someone
question.
stayed at a hotel in Vegas on the Strip. That's a really nice hotel, by the way.
Yeah.
That's really funny. No, I will say why Aria, the name, there's an answer to that. I'm sure we'll get to that. But the other question was why change the name? So when I first heard about Aria, I was like, oh, I hadn't heard of that. What is that? And the person that was explaining it to me, which shall remain nameless, said it's just vRealize. And I was like, oh, well then why would we just change the name then? That doesn't make it has to be more than that.
Yeah. So it's definitely more than that. So I'll talk about the name's origins first. So our fearless leader, Purnima, who's the GM and VP of cloud management, she has a big musical background, a lot of singing, lots of voice, lots of musical instruments, and she participates in a lot of music-related community activities and all that stuff. And so if you were in the cloud management BU, you would know, like even actually Project Ensemble. It's an ensemble, right?
Okay.
Our own internal platform is called Symphony. And we've used a lot of music nomenclature internally and subtly externally. But Aria works in many ways, and it's actually genius. And if I may say so, it is the definition of Aria is several voices coming together to essentially rise above all the noise. So an aria it would be kind of what comes out of a score, right? Or in technology, and perfectly fits what we're doing here is it's all of these technologies as the voices coming together to rise above any one specific product, right? It's to deliver a unified voice for cloud management. So it actually works quite well, and that's why Aria is what it is.
So it's one voice rising up. Yeah, I now remembering my opera history. So from a I guess from a monitoring, in management capabilities, what are we looking at here? I mean, I've seen a lot of attempts in the industry that have happened where people have tried to build monitoring tools that were either really good at one thing and out of the box did that one thing well and didn't really scale, or your traditional enterprise RMM tooling and monitoring and tooling that could do anything but required endless customization and really looked like 10 different UIs bolted together. What is different about the foundation about this? What is different about not just the foundation but also the front end experience? What's the execution look like?
Yeah, we've been there, done that. We've stitched a whole bunch of technologies together because we wanted customers to interact with all those technologies without necessarily navigating away or reducing the number of steps between any two tasks and those types of things. And we've called that a cloud management platform, but it was, it's a suite. vRealize is a technology stack. For on-premises tooling, it's a suite of products that you build for the CMP type experience. But one of the things that we should probably make very clear here is that we didn't go out to rebuild a product or a solution because that was a gap missing in VMware, right, or in cloud management. So, for example, one of the positions we're in, VMware has several domain-specific expert products. So, vRealize operations, industry leadership in just your typical NOC, ops, and that's continued to grow, and a lot of integrations into ops as well. vRealize automation for lifecycle management, again for cloud consumption, lifecycle management, governance, all these things. If anybody knows my background, the best tool on earth, right? vRealize automation. The addition of Salt and all that stuff has been pretty great there. Network Insight for deep analysis of your network flows and NetFlow data and the visualizations in Network Insight are incredible. Tanzu Observability, which is now back in the Cloud Management BU for time series data and the ability to scale infinitely. Secure State for public cloud security and compliance and visibility into how your public clouds are functioning, right? Cloud Health. I mean, so we can go down that path.
Well, and you mentioned each of these products, and in my mind, it's actually a completely different person normally in an organization is consuming them. Be it compliance on that last one, the networking team is who, or occasionally security is who's staring at net flows. Application observability. That side, that's an app developer trying to figure out why something's slow, or maybe a full stack engineer. It's how do you build a tool that can encompass different personas, I guess?
So that's exactly it. So we've seen a couple of things. So first of all, these solutions that I've rattled off, they are industry leading in their domain. All right, they have a lot of history with our customers, and there's a lot going on there. And over the years, we've done a lot of technology insertion into the individual domains. But one of the things we've always stuck to is building that product for the persona that is typically the admin of that product. So for automation and operations and network insight, like you mentioned, different personas. Meanwhile, the industry is shifting into this center of excellence, cloud management, because when we start talking to multi-cloud, right, it's less siloed personas. It's more about the tiger team. And it's a critical aspect of success in this world for multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. We're seeing all of these, the convergence of all these technologies to common teams. Now, inside the team, you're going to have expertise that are contributing to it. But the reality is you can no longer build a solution that is a point product. So how do you come from a VMware portfolio that was vRealize and say, okay, well, how do we get from here to there? Do we just squish all of this together and allow it to be consumed like it's one thing? No, that doesn't work, because what happens is you're squishing 6 versions of the same, of 6 versions of how to reference the same VM, right? Or 6 different UIDs for the same application, or different.
Well, you end up with you end up with 6 different databases, 6 different tools to lifecycle, and okay, there's a link and I can jump between them, I guess, but that's
exactly, and that's that stitched together thing. You're still building these disparate products. So how do we do it? First of all, we look at what we have, and what we have is incredibly rich, incredibly deep data sets. Okay, that's one. And how do we leverage that? And that's honestly the gold right there. So customers, even customers today, to this day, they don't want to move from the solutions they're comfortable with, because they know the value of the rich data that has been harvested from these tools, be it Log Insight or Network Insight or Automation Ops, etc. There's a lot of history there, and that history is gonna be usable. So the solution was not stitched together. The solution was to federate, and federate is today's word, the word of the day, right? Federate. We're gonna do that a lot today, right?
So federate means that the backend data may be slightly different data lakes or different formats, because obviously you may want a time series database for some things, or you may want different structures for different, but you can have a common front end consumption API management, right?
Yeah. So we've actually taken, we're going to jump into technology now. So we've actually taken an approach we haven't done before. So instead of saying like, hey, let's get all of these different disparate products to a point where they can talk better together and share data together, what we did is we built from the ground up a brand new SaaS first cloud scale platform, leveraging a lot of the modern technologies to build this federated data store, and we're leveraging a graph database, hence Aria Graph. The graph database is actually something we've built internally in VMware, and it came from our secure state business. It's called the Entity Data Store. And it is graph based, and we've taken that and then built it to scale at hundreds of millions of entities, because that is what we're talking about in multi-cloud. So the graph database is really core to this. Now, there's a lot of plumbing around that. First step was to bring the graph database over. The second step was to say, okay, let's just take 7 or 8 data feeds from 7 or 8 different products. And those solutions are doing their thing. They've got their own data collectors and all this. So how do we not interrupt what our customers are currently doing, but be able to immediately take a step up as far as technology capability, right? And so what we're doing is we're ingesting all these speeds and feeds coming from all the disparate products. We're federating that. We're doing in-flight data transformation and dedupe and correlation. And one of the first things we do is we say, hey, this VM, let's just say a VM or instance or template or whatever it might be, I see this thing coming up as represented in these 8 different ways. I'm saying 8 because these are sources, like
it could be the net flows, so the packet flow, could be syslog events, all kinds of different, different kinds of data, but are still affiliated with the same object.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's the same object, and that's the biggest challenge right there. It's got that same object. So now, how do we say? How do we address that? That's a problem we've always had. Even if you have different vCenters, or even if you migrate, let's face it.
Federation has been around forever anyway. Like in my Microsoft days with Active Directory, and Federation is important. So and that challenge that Federation answers has been around for many years.
Exactly. So what we do is we bring all this together, and then we implemented a universal naming convention. So Aria Graph knows that this pointer that is being collected, or this entity that is being collected 8 different ways, is actually this one thing. So the first thing we do is we use our own, and it's another internal technology. It's called the VRN, or it's a VMware Resource Naming Convention. It's a universal naming convention called VRN. And we say, okay, from this point forward, thou shall be called this UID, right?
Okay, I was going to ask you about that, because with all these different tools coming, and everyone has a different language, everyone calls something different. So there needs to be some sort of consistency across multiple tools. Yeah.
Pete and I both call our file server, so we've got to have a way to differentiate. So
mine's Easy NAS, NAS, Easy NAS. So there's another piece of this, right? Once I have a consolidated view and I can have all of these different pointers called the same thing, I immediately gain something, which, by the way, is not a very easy thing to do, but it was a key element of this key principle of the technology we built. Now think about it. When I'm talking about multi-cloud and starting to introduce services like migration and being able to understand where this VM lives or how it changes over time and life cycles, I never lose sight of its history, of its metrics, of its controls, of its RBAC, of its presence, of its lifecycle state, etc. So I could change managers, primary managers. I can change environments, and I will bring all of that data with me, because now I have this centralized, unified naming convention. So that was step one, right? Step two is the plumbing. It's bringing all the data together is fine, but we don't want to store 8 copies of the same data or similar data. There's a lot of overlap. Ops and Verni both understand what network metrics are. Verni does it much, much deeper at a whole different level, right? vCenter knows CPU consumption and guest consumption, all that, but Ops does that a whole lot better with much, much deeper analytics and visibility. So how do we reconcile all of that? Again, Graph has the logic to be able to say, okay, you have this solution feeding us. We're going to choose XYZ for the primary the primary provider of that metric. If I have ops cost and a customer brings in Cloud Health, for example, or subscribes to Cloud Health, I know that I want to switch my cost metric from vRealize Operations or Aria Ops to Cloud Health. And so there is overlap between the products, but they all also bring the vast majority of their technologies as a unique thing. And then we bring all of this together under that unified identifier. We start allowing modeling, application discovery, insights into all of this. And from that point forward, whenever I'm looking at a VM or an application or instance or any entity, a network, a security group, whatever it might be across multi-cloud, I have the visibility that is whole. It's a complete view. And I have all the associated metrics coming from all my speeds and feeds, assuming that I have the rights and permissions to see that. So app owners have always wanted to know basic stuff beyond time series that they could use Tanzu observability for. They want to know, what if they do want to know net flow data between their application tiers? Well, now they could have that in the same exact view without necessarily being net admins or net ops people, right?
Well, and I think back to one of the challenges that used to happen when you had the 8 teams, in a standoff all finger pointing at each other, was everyone had their favorite tool and they were the only one who knew how it worked. And you'd be like, look, this proves I'm innocent. And they're like, I have no clue what that tool is. I've never used that tool. Like, cool, you love Manage Engine or whatever tribe you belong to, but the sysadmins, we don't use that tool. But now I think there's something, and maybe this is kind of like a psychological basis, but if everyone's working in the same tooling, even within their sub areas, I think you're going to get more trust. And like you talked about, building that coherent team who has the subspecialties, but is one team who answers to one manager rather than 8 warring tribes, which is what I would have called a lot of, IT infrastructure groups before. This sounds like should bring some harmony, pardoning the, musical pun here.
And I would add to that not only are you all working from the same tool, but now that since all of these various areas are in the same tool, there's more data available about said issue. It's not just, oh, well, look at my version based on this, what I can see. It's like, oh, well, there's other parts that you're not
Well,
seeing that we can now see.
Well, you get sampling error issues. So if one person's got a tool that pulls once an hour and someone else has a tool that say observability that pulls every 5 seconds, and they don't understand that, you can get all kinds of fun problems. So getting this all into one common platform, being able to normalize the data sets and how you look at it should lead to a lot less awkward conversations. So let's talk a little bit about what the day 2 looks like. So if I want to consume this, am I just deploying, some type of gateway and my existing solution slurp data out to this? Is the end state that I just have some collectors and that eventually, I move to this tool? And it sounds like since this is SaaS, lifecycle is going to hopefully at some point become more and more someone else's problem.
Yeah. So key to making this work, and customers are totally on board, and we have smart customers. They get it. They understand that to build and to deliver what we are delivering, it has to be a SaaS solution. I mentioned EDS scaling to 200 million objects per organization, right? Or hundreds of millions.
So Microsoft SQL is backing this then, right?
No, graph. So it's our own entity data store, which is, you can call it a CMDB, but
even if a customer could install something like this, no one wants to manage, databases that can scale into the double or triple digit petabytes. Like you want this someone else's problem.
Exactly. So just first things first, the entire management plane needs to live in SaaS, and a lot of customers are saying, well, I'm on-prem. I get the SaaS thing. I have vRealize stack deployed on-prem, and SaaS is in our future, but we need to get there. And this is something that we're trying to also reconcile. But the reality is to keep the versions, the onus on versioning and
if you have 8 different tools doing collection and stuff, trying to lifecycle them and maintain, it's like aligning planets, like trying to keep the LCM chart up to date.
Exactly. And all customers who have a VRCU subscription today, they have the freedom to deploy our SaaS versions of the tools on-prem, and actually a significant amount started in SaaS. The newer customers went SaaS first, and that's really the right approach. It makes sense. It solves a lot of other issues. Also, they're not managing their own management tools. Actually, I was in New York and Connecticut this week, and speaking to a customer, and they said, you know what? Our app teams want to use the solutions that the IT is putting in place, and in this case, it was VRA, but they don't want to use an on-premises tool to manage their public cloud applications.
There you go.
They've been pushing the IT to push that tool into SaaS, and I'm like, well, okay, let's get this done, right?
Absolutely.
And the thing is, they have a subscription, and they're able to do it, and it's just a matter of us actually doing a little bit more and helping them get there. But anyway, so that management plane is all SaaS, so it's instant gratification, and the scope for what we ingest is all on-premises infrastructure. So all your VMware SDDCs, as well as VMware Cloud on anything, and then Azure, AWS, GCP, and then those are our focus areas. And then as we continue to build this out into other providers, the plan is to get the full scope of public cloud providers, in this iterative way. So a customer with a very large on-premises SDDC environment or distributed and just gets collectors, right? And that whole collector technology is also changing significantly. We want to collect. We want to be able to consolidate, collect at the edge. Ultimately, we don't necessarily need 8 collectors feeding us, and then we are doing all the logic and unifying and consolidating that data and correlating it. Wouldn't it be nice if the collector did that at the edge and sent us one efficient stream? That's one of the things we're looking at, and there's a lot of work going on there as well. And then for the public clouds, it's direct API. We're pulling direct metrics. Either the Aria tools are doing it, or the collector is doing it, but more likely it's both. So we're pulling inventory directly, the least path of resistance, right? Pulling inventory directly in some cases, and then marrying that up with the appropriate metrics based on what's deployed and what's in use. And then third party becomes a big part of that. How do I incorporate third party metrics for an object that third party calls something different, right? And so we're actually extending the VRN and the graph to third party integration through this modular extensibility approach. And that's more later next year type thing.
Okay. So I know you guys with Federation now, and you've got this API Federation. What new services could possibly be available with this?
Yeah, actually, let me. The coolest thing about all of this is, okay, you federate the data. So how do you consume federated data? And that's the next. That's the part that really opens up a whole lot of things for your average user. And so in front of the platform, in front of Aria Graph and the Graph database, we've implemented a public API. And the principle here is also everything we can do in Graph, all the integrations, all the data is publicly available through GraphQL. And GraphQL is our API front end, and it's public. So, one of the things we can do with GraphQL here is, let's just take this example. We keep saying 8 products. So let's just say we have eight data feeds coming in. And today, if I was a cloud super user or in the cloud COE, and I wanted to query inventory, and based on that inventory, I want to understand application topology and tiers. Maybe if I have Verni, I can do that with the flow-based application discovery. So I'll query Verni several times, right? And I want to then take that and I want to figure out what CPU, storage, and memory metrics are, basic stuff, or maybe what my capacity is in this environment, or what my the future looks like as far as available capacity and efficiency and all that. So I'm going to query all that from ops. Now I'm doing it for every object I collected in that inventory that is making up this application. So I'm piecing together things. Separate RESTful calls, right? Separate a lot of things. I want to know the project that owns this. Now I'm querying VRA. I want to know the lifecycle state, the deployment it was a part of, the template that deployed it. Again, several. You get the gist. I'm hitting cloud health for cost, and now I have to do a lot of translation to figure out which matches which, right?
Sure.
GraphQL in front of a federated consumption layer in front of the federated data means we've already done all the work. That whole scenario, which would have been at least 100 back and forth queries and posts and gets, right, is a single request, single payload, single response. And I would query Graph, so Aria Graph. Graph responds based on the GraphQL payload, which is a very succinct, like, here's what I want, and give me just this. So we're not responding with these massive payloads, and you're shifting through through the RESTful response or anything like that. It's exactly what you asked for. And Graph is actually, we use what's called GraphQL stitching. Is actually figuring out from that request where all this different data should come from based on the query to Graph, and it does exactly that. It stitches it all together, so you get one response for that entire query, which would have taken not just bandwidth, but the efficiency and the latency and the time to do all of those different RESTful queries is now a single GraphQL query and experience. It's the same interface that our UI uses. So Aria Hub is the primary consumption interface for UI, and it is a bleeding edge UI experience and visualization experience that brings all of these different things together. And now I'll answer your question. So with all of that, it really opens up the door for new services. So now the question is, okay, you've done all this great platform stuff. You say, I automatically get it. And from GA, I'm going to be able to just interact with all these tools based on what I have through Aria Hub, leveraging Aria Graph. True story. But what does that actually mean from a value proposition other than federation and all these great visualizations? What it means is, for the first time, we're bringing a lot of data together. We have complete views of applications. We have complete views of metrics and KPIs and SLAs and SLOs and SLIs and cost and relationships and all of this stuff. Complete views available in a unified way. So now I can deploy net new technologies and technologies we've announced, or services we've announced, like Aria Guardrails. Aria Guardrails takes this unified picture and allows you to say, like, hey, here's a policy for how I want this cloud or this app or this VM or these entities or this project to function. I want cost limitations, region deployment limitations, people limitations. And I don't want to just say, here's a policy, go abide by that policy. I want to watch the environment, and I want to leverage our own technologies, IDEM, in this case, IDEM, stands for idempotent, to ensure that policy is enforced and make you very aware via insights whether or not when there's drift, and more importantly, automatically resolve the drift. So if I have a user in a project that's supposed to deploy into one region of AWS, for example, I can, and that same user goes and circumvents the system and deploys into a different region, I can reconcile that and say, hey, we're in violation. I could block it from happening. This is just an example. Or I can force it to get into the guardrail, right? The swim lane or the guardrail, the policy. It's data as code. It leverages IDEM, which came as part of it's open source. It's an awesome solution. It came into our BU through the Salt acquisition, but is continuing to be developed as an open source tool. I do recommend everybody go check it out. So that's one thing, guardrails. The other one is, again, full view. Now I have a full picture of what a migration should look like, because I have topology and tiers and relationships and ownerships and metrics and all this stuff. So for the first time, I can say, instead of just saying, what will it cost to migrate this to this, or what do I need to do? It actually takes a lot more consideration and says, your success rate of doing this, and these are the different steps, and hey, actually don't do this. It's going to cost you more. It's going to break your app, or whatever it might be. So Aria migration assessment service is another one there. And then finally, business insights. Again, bringing all of this data together. I've been talking about metrics and inventory, but the other thing we bring together is events and alerts. You have eight or more solutions. When I have a VM out, almost every single one of them is going to tell you about it, and it's going to tell you about it in its own words, with its own UID and all that stuff. Well, that changes now. Aria will give you one consistent insight and says, hey, this event storm just happened, but it's actually just this one thing. And here's who's impacted. Here's what it means to your environment. Here's the bottom line. Do you want me to fix it for you? Or I could walk you through a resolution. And if I don't have a resolution or a root cause, I can go and drill into my domain specialty tools. Just bounce and do it.
See, that's incredible, because I've seen a lot of attempts at building a root cause analysis tool that point to, the root cause of the 40 alarms. And they often just fail because they're based at the end of the day, they're based around one, domain area's knowledge of what's going on. And I remember a long time ago, joking with my ops teams that we needed to stop pinging things to monitor, and just for at least ES6i hosts, and just look for when the syslog feed stops, because vSphere is the most chatty syslog on the planet. And if that, we used to ping every 5 minutes, and we're like, well, let's just look for syslog failing within 1 minute and make a broad assumption. But the fact that you can actually bring all these different domain tools to say, oh, this is offline. This is actually why all these things are bad. Or oh, look, the data store is gone. That's why 200 VMs are offline, rather than you dig through 200 VMs are not responding to, WMI queries for performance, or, whatever it is. Being able to get that real root cause. And that's something that, it helps teams, who don't necessarily always have cross-domain expertise. If you can have that inferencing brought in by a tool in that regard, also can help teams who even have those people who are just tired. It's 3 a.m. and, someone paged you. That's hopefully going to bring a lot of peace versus hopefully reduce the largest complaint I hear about every enterprise monitoring tool isn't that it missed something. It's that it was too noisy.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, the reality is, look, I'll be first to admit it, that we in the past have delivered a pretty complex puzzle, but the puzzle pieces have been spread out across different teams and different, and so they've never. So we have everything we need to bring this together across our technology stack. So it's why that we couldn't even begin to announce or suggest what we're building until we got the platform right.
Mm-hmm.
Once we were able to federate that data and say, well, how easy is it now to figure out? Relatively easy, right? There's a lot of ML and a lot of analytics and a lot of stuff happening to cluster these things and make that happen. But all the pieces are there. And API communication was not going to solve that problem, right? Federating the data and being like, oh, okay, so now I have all these puzzle pieces on the table in front of me. I could very easily tell you how to put the pieces together. And that's another analogy for federation, right? We're bringing all these things together. A lot of the technology, again, best in breed, we already had customers already enjoying. They just weren't on the table at the same time.
Yeah, they were listening to some great singer in one room using this tool. They were listening to another singer in another room with a different tool, and now they're all in the same room singing in the same key.
Well, Pete, your analogy is too nice. In reality, there was a dog barking in the background, which is what I refer to as the security team complaining about their their Splunk events. But no, it's you basically had various different almost distracting noises, but looking at the interface here, which I know, this is a podcast here, but I encourage everyone to go look up Aria Hub. This interface, one, it looks very pretty, good job. But two, it looks like it's actually designed to scale. And one of the challenges is historically, a lot of people, you go back to the Stone Ages, we had monolithic, you got an app, it's got a database, it's got a web server, all runs in the same VM. Then we split that out, or maybe we put a load balancer, ended up with kind of apps that had 3 tiers. And starting about, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, I remember talking to some banking and some airline customers, and you'd ask them to whiteboard all the hops in the IO packet of their app. And it looks like this crazy thing. It looked like Charlie from Always Sunny with like 16 things and 16 different lines go, it looks like you were this like crazy conspiracy theorist trying to map out, what happened. And it's the tooling that was designed to do a root cause or designed to understand an app that had 4 pieces doesn't scale to microservices and containers and all these other hipster things. Yeah. But this interface, it reminds me of some other previous R&D work on interfaces that I saw Octo do several years ago. This looks like this is designed to both allow you to drill in, but also like scroll out and have full vision.
Yeah, so you're referring to Project Magna, also known as vRealize AI, and that's a good segue. So obviously, everything I've talked about is not just about bringing data together. There's a lot of data transformation and analytics that has to happen. So the entire vRealize AI platform is folded into Aria as part of the backend platform. So there's a lot of actually really great public and private cloud, multi-cloud use cases coming out of that, and we're just not prepared to say anything at this point, but keep your ears and eyes open for some announcements there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's the same team. Our team it really does act as an incubator in the office of CTO, as most groups are, and so when our entire team became 100% focused on making Aria a reality, one of the decisions was, hey, we've got to fold in ML, the AI and ML work that we've done with vRealize AI right into the platform. So it's a platform service. A lot of the visualization cues came over with that, but we've actually taken it a little bit further. vRealize AI didn't do federation per se. It did modeling, and it did some incredible things with data feeds, but it did it more of a one-to-one, right? I've got vSAN feeds coming in, and there's some correlation with inventory and all that stuff. But then I'm modeling and building digital twins and doing all this other great stuff and coming out with outcomes and being very predictive. So when we brought that into a federated model, it's gold. It really is gold, and it allows us to do a lot of really great things that we haven't even touched on today, and more will come out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with all of that, and since you're folding these vRealize pieces of the portfolio into Aria, what does that mean for the existing vRealize portfolio?
Well, it's called Aria now.
Okay, so it's so for folks that are still using vRealize, they're using Aria.
Oh yeah. No. So I mean, I've even spoken to customers saying, look, we've deployed vRealize the whole stack on premises, and we're just not prepared to move off of it. How does this impact us? Well, it doesn't impact you. It just doesn't. And that's it. Then you have your other customers like, hey, we're all in on vRealize SaaS, now Aria. What does it mean for us? It means that when this GA is, you're going to log in and you're going to be in Aria. And you're going to have in context deep linkage into each of the individual products. But the hope is that when you're looking at these unified views, and you've got the appropriate RBAC or the appropriate permissions, you should be able to bounce into the personalized, the personalized landing page, the home page, and have a really good understanding of what your day is going to be like, right? And maybe not even have to navigate away from that unless you want to get into something. That's the idea, and it's going to be unique to everybody. So it just happens. One day it's just going to show up. But you'll always be able to still jump into, if you're still siloed and you're not ready for that view, you can go into VRA, you can go into Ops, you can go into Verni, you can go into Cloud Health.
I like that we're not just banging that drum of single pane of glass, and we've managed to avoid actually saying that phrase this entire thing. Single pane of glass is awful. There's all kinds of reasons to build different UIs for things.
Actually, one of the services that are going into Aria Hub, the main interface there, is a personalization service. Won't call it single pane of glass because it's a single pane of what you care about.
I mean, my DNS server at home is currently modeled up to look like the Star Trek Enterprise. What happened to skins? Like, everyone had their own customized Winamp, skin. Like, I like this idea of customization depending on function rather than, the tyranny of there being one UI for all.
So certainly there's a lot of customization. We allow dashboards and widgets to be pinned and moved around. But more importantly, Aria engage or does a lot of behavioral analytics and says, hey, you're interacting with this thing a lot. You must care about cost. I'm going to bubble this up, right? And next time you log in, it's going to be a little bit closer to you.
Ooh.
And get rid of this, right?
I need that for vCenter. There's certain things that are at the top that I'm like, why is this here? Please, no.
Yeah. So there's yeah. So it's the Spotify or Apple Music experience, right? Or Netflix experience, whatever you want to call it.
Probably Spotify. I think Apple still has human curators for some of those playlists, so they still have an opinion. But
yeah, probably
sounds good.
I'm an Apple guy.
Same. Well, Jad, this has been thorough, man. I appreciate it. We will leave links on the show notes of the podcast page to the announcement blogs, to any demo videos that may be available, but also the VMware Explorer sessions about Aria. There was plenty of content to consume around Aria these past couple of weeks. So, Jad, thanks so much for joining us, man, and we look forward to hearing more about this.
Absolutely. I will say several big announcements have been saved for Barcelona, so looking forward to that. And there'll be announcements of things we've never done before, so it'll be exciting.
We need to get on your calendar now then, because we will be at Barcelona and we will be podcasting, so let's make it happen.
Let's do it.